So you just got into motorcycling, or you're a bit curious about our world, but you get hit with this crazy Swahili you just don't get. Well, don't you worry, Al's got you covered with this A to Z for motorcycle culture. Now bear in mind, this is not for the seasoned, so some details will be skipped and some notions vulgarized. But still, don't tune out, see if you know them all, you might learn a thing or two, or if you don't, I hope at least you'll be entertained. If you don't get something, don't worry, there'll be more videos coming out explaining things in a lot more details, so don't forget to subscribe. Let's go. One piece. Just like women's swimwear, we get to choose between an all-in-one suit of protective clothing, typically leather, or two pieces like this. While we like to think we look cool, we really just look like a monkey Power Ranger. Ace Cafe. Ace Cafe is a meetup place synonymous with motorcycling and with a very rich history. In the 50s, the ton of boys would get on their bikes and race against a cafe's jukebox to complete a circuit to hang a lane roundabouts a few miles down the road and back before the song is finished.
Just a minute, hold on. I've got racing pistons on this, you know.
These days, however, the cafe attracts a different breed of people. Acra, Akrapovic, one of the world's biggest manufacturer of performance exhausts. A whole video unwrapping the Akrapovic story is available in the channel. Make sure to check it out. Atgani. This is an acronym for all the gear and no idea. It's a term for a biker who buys the most expensive bike, most expensive helmet and top shelf leathers, but the only riding he ever does is sitting on his bike in his garage. Atgat refers to wearing all the gear all the time, no matter if it's too hot or too short of a trip. Some people take it a bit too seriously though. BAB, a born-again biker. Typically a previous biker who's given up on motorcycling for whatever reason, but is returning to biking after a very long break. And of course, as you do, he goes straight to a 200 miles an hour cruise missile. His love for biking has survived the break, but his riding skills haven't. That's why on a summer Sunday morning, you find more born-again bikers in ditches than on the road. Baby Blade. This is a Honda CBR 400, the baby version of a Fireblade, a much bigger bike, which are also nicknamed Blade. Baffle. This is a restrictor that's in most aftermarket exhausts to reduce noise emission. Big Four. These are the dominating four Japanese bike manufacturers: Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki, and Kawasaki. Bin it or bind it. This is self-explanatory. It's crashing a bike pretty bad. It usually means I was going too fast and ran out of talent. Bandit. This refers to the Suzuki Bandit, a bike okay at everything but excels at nothing. Boxer. It's typically found in BMW motorcycles. It's an engine configuration comprising horizontally opposed cylinders, which when firing look like they're exchanging jabs, just like boxers. That's why you end up with the cylinder heads protruding from the sides. If you're from the car world, this is exactly the same configuration found in Porsches and Subarus. Braided hoses mainly refers to brake lines made of braided metal. It's a relatively inexpensive upgrade from rubber hoses, which don't handle pressure as well as braided metal, so you get better braking performance and especially feel. Brembo. This is currently the reference in high quality brake parts. It's often copied by the others with varying degrees of success. Busa. This refers to the Suzuki Hayabusa, a late 90s icon of top speed that can reach just under 200 miles an hour far too damn easily. It is also an absolute magnet for what's called the Busa Bro. If you don't recommend a Busa as a beginner bike to people on the internet, are you even a real biker? Cage. Cage is a car with the cager being the person driving the car. Can, or end can. This is the end of an exhaust system. Why is it called a can? Well, because it looks like a can. CC. You'll see CCs on brochures and fact sheets, and they basically refers to engine displacements, which is a measure of the cylinder volume swept by all the pistons in an engine. Typically, the bigger the displacement, the more powerful the combustion, and therefore the more powerful an engine is. Displacement is measured in cubic centimeters or liters, equivalent to 1000 milliliters, hence the liter bike referring to 1000 cc bikes. If your manufacturer of bike of choice is stuck in the past, then they'll quote displacement in something called cubic inches. CBER. CBER refers to the widely successful Honda CBR, which came in 400, 600 and 1000 cc flavors. Chain slack. Chain slack is how much vertical play there is on the bike's chain. Once again, it's a compromise exercise where having too much slack can result in the chain coming off the sprocket and too little slack and your suspension can't do its job and your sprockets will wear extremely quickly. Chicken strips. No, it's not this. Ugh, now I really want KFC. It's the area of unused rubber found on people's bikes who don't lean too much. The idea is the bigger the strip, the bigger the chicken. On one hand, you have people so scared of their bikes their tires developed actual chicken strips. On the other, you've got chads who take a sanding belt to their tires and flex on people who couldn't give a shit. Let's move on. Clip-ons. A sort of handlebars that clip on to the top of the forks. They're typically found on sports bikes as they allow for a more forward-leaning position. Clutch up is using a clutch pump as opposed to a power wheelie, which uses the engine power alone. Low power bikes can only clutch up wheelie, potentially, while high power bikes can do both. Counter steering. In a very simple way, counter steering is the act of pushing where you want to go, so the handlebar is pointing in the opposite direction. People overcomplicate this, but really there's nothing to learn, since you are 100% already doing it, whether aware of it or not. Crotch rocket typically refers to a sports bike due to their propensity to be too fast. People buy them to impress girls, but the only attention they get is from the police. Divvy, nickname for the Yamaha diversion or diversion. It's the AMI equivalent of the Blandit. Ducati. If the TV series 24 was a motorcycle, because getting one to work for 24 hours is an exploit. It's the Ferrari of the motorcycle world. They're expensive and beautiful, just like a piece of art, which is just as well since you'll spend more time looking at it at the side of the road than actually riding it. Euro 1 to 5. It's an emission regulation by Europe which started in the 90s to lower pollution. Since Europe is one of the biggest motorcycle markets in the world, these regulations have an effect on bikes worldwide, and is the reason why we see more engine electronics like the ride-by-wire, bigger exhausts, and bigger engines. Paradoxical as it may seem, but I'll explain that in a future video. The idea is by a certain year, all engines have to emit less than X amount of hydrocarbons. And that amount is reducing fast over the years, making it harder and harder for manufacturers to meet those regulations. Fairing. This is the outer shell of a faired bike. It was previously reserved to racing bikes only, but over the decades, they found themselves into production bikes as well. Farkles. And there's no official definition, but it's typically accessories added to a bike, the usefulness of which is only in the eye of the farkler. It's typically unnecessary, blingy, and is the motorcycle equivalent of hoarding stuff in your attic because you need everything you ever had all the time. Fighter, short for Street Fighter. These are typically a crash sports bike. They did quickly become synonymous with hooliganism because if the bike's already crashed, what's a bit of extra crashing going to matter? Filtering. This is riding on the lanes between stationary or moving cars. Come to think of it, you do put a lot of faith on cages while riding the bike. The trick is really to not go twice the speed of light and give everyone, including yourself, time to react. Fork. Forks are the cheapest and most conventional front suspension setup. Full system. This is a complete set of aftermarket exhaust parts. This typically comprises headers, pipes, and the can. Front end typically refers to the forks and front wheel of a motorbike. Losing the front end refers to the front wheel losing grip and skidding. Gixxer. This is a nickname for the extremely capable Suzuki GSXR. The amount of choice for the Gixxer bro. The type of guy to do an obnoxious burnout at every traffic light. GS refers to the BMW GS, widely popularized by the long way down with Ewan McGregor and the other guy. It's the bike equivalent of SUVs gaining ridiculous popularity out of nowhere and no one using them for their intended purpose. A hardtail, a bike with no rear suspension, typically found on old choppers, aka the best way to lose your hearing and your spine at the same time. Harley refers to Harley Davidson, a brand of bike that makes me want a beer, buffalo wings, and an M16. Headers. Unlike headers in that sport where millionaires are chasing a bag of wind, motorcycle headers have no ball involved and are just the section of an exhaust that attaches to the engine.